Heard about the new Nitto 555 G2 Ultra High Performance tire? It's the next generation of the 555 you know, that steps up performance on every level. It's got better traction, handling, and wet braking. And if you haven't heard about it yet, you will.
Step up to the all-new Nitto 555 G2. Check it out at nittotire.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, coming at you live from a sunny but cold day in Atlanta, Georgia. It is blue skies here after a rough night of icy rain. Holy cow. But hopefully warmer temperatures are on the way, and we'll see. I hope wherever you are happens to be a good day for tennis. It looks like it's shaping up to be one here. This week's show is going to be focused around nutrition for junior athletes, and I'm happy to have with us today Michael Farrington of High Altitude Tennis. And those of you who listen to the show on a regular basis, you'll probably remember a recent show with Ryan Sigulke of High Altitude Tennis. And Michael works with Ryan to bring good nutrition to their players and also to share that information via their website and through outlets such as this radio show. So I'm really happy to be able to have Michael with us today and have him share with us the latest and greatest information around keeping our athletes fed properly, hydrated properly, and to get some information on what these kids need to be eating during their practices, during and after matches, and just basically how to ensure that they're getting enough of the right calories to stay healthy out there. So I think I have Michael on the line. Michael, are you there? He is showing up as being in the queue, but I am not able to connect with him for some reason. I'm going to try this again. Michael, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you. Hello. I tried to get you a minute ago and couldn't find you, but glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, sure. So before we get started, I wanted to just give our listeners a little bit of background on you. You grew up playing tennis and went to University of South Carolina. I'm sorry, you walked on as a swimmer, and I totally misread that, tennis on the brain, and that's all I see when I read about athletics. So you walked on the South Carolina team as a swimmer, and so you have experience with college athletics and understanding what is necessary to succeed at that level. How did you get involved with high altitude tennis and specifically with the nutrition side of things?
Great question. Yes, I do have a little bit different background than most out there in that I was a swimmer growing up all the way through college. When I was looking into colleges and being recruited by colleges, I was looking out here in the Colorado area at DU, at CU. CU didn't have a team, so that was out. And I ultimately chose to go to South Carolina, but I always knew I would be back here in Colorado at some point after I graduated. So as I go through college, we had our nutritionists, we had our registered dietitians helping us with our nutrition programs. I was interested in it at that point, and I came out here to Colorado, like I said, after I graduated. I was training athletes, and really I just kind of fell into meeting Ryan. He saw that I had an athletic background, saw that I trained a lot of athletes, and he wanted to train with me, and it was basically like a 6-month interview process where he would show up, he'd ask me a bunch of questions as we trained. Who have you trained, what have you done for them, all that, and, oh, by the way, I'm starting a tennis academy pretty soon, would you like to be a part of it? So that was about 6 years ago, and then about 5 years ago we started HAT. I've been training and helping the kids with their nutrition, tennis specific since then, but I've been training athletes since I graduated college, unfortunately about 10 years ago, so it's I'm rapidly getting older.
Yeah, I just had a birthday last week, so we're not going to go there. So your focus is really around junior athletes and their nutrition needs, and you have written articles for the HAT website, and you guys are so generous with sharing your information out in the social media world, and as a parent, I appreciate that so much. Can you talk to us about what the specific needs are for junior athletes? And you can focus around tennis, or you can talk about, your growing up in the swimming world and your knowledge with swimmers as well. But then I would really like for us to try and develop an understanding of how the nutritional needs of kids changes, whether they're prepubescent, they're going through puberty, they're in late adolescence, and how that looks different from our needs as adults.
Great question, very involved. So with the kids
Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's good. The kids that we have here, really the major goals of our nutrition program is energy balance, so knowing that they have they're taking in the correct nutrients and the right amount of calories. One, keep them going through their entire match, but two, not tap out later at night. We want to have that energy balance consistent throughout the day. Number two would be recovery, so obviously recovering from the match or practice so that that way they can get back on the court and do it again sooner. Body composition, which we don't really get into a whole lot with the females and even some of the guys. And then ultimately long-term health, in terms of setting them up for success down the road. That's really a big thing for us. It's bigger than tennis. If we can get them on the right path right now and build the skills for down the road, then they're going to be healthier, happier adults, and they won't run into the health issues. So as we go through kids and then into pubescence and then into adult life, really with the kids we focus on trying to get lean protein, fruits and vegetables every single meal. You can have the rice, you can have the grains, but those aren't our focus. They're not as nutritionally valuable as vegetables or fruit, so we really try to push the vegetables and fruit on them, and again, building the skills for later in life. As they go into pubescence, they're going to need a lot more calories, just because they're growing. The guy's testosterone is going through the charts. They try to. It seems like they try to eat you out of house at home. And the beauty of the lean protein, fruits, vegetables, and then a little bit of the grains is they can have pretty much as much of that as they want. Their body will naturally tell them, hey, it's time to tap out. You've had enough. Whereas if they're growing up eating pizza and cookies and things like that have a lot of sugar in them and really taste really good and kind of have addictive properties, they're going to eat more than they should. It kind of tricks the brain into thinking that they should continue eating, whereas natural foods will tell them, hey, stop. And then as adults, hopefully if they built the correct skills all the way through, their food intake will go down a little bit as they're not growing, they're not sleeping for 12 hours a day anymore, but hopefully they're still continuing with that lean protein fruits, vegetables.
So there's a kind of, I don't know, one school of thought out there, and I don't think it's nutritionally based or science-based, but maybe just mom-based, that, you know, our kids are exerting so much energy, burning so many calories, training on and off the court, that really, why does it matter what they're eating? You know, because they're burning the calories anyway. And that's a bad way to go about this, right?
Absolutely. You can look at the macronutrients, you know, protein, fat, carbs, and as long as it fits into the percentages that the government gives us and the dietitian associations give us, you know, it should be all right, correct? But really, right, when you get down to it and you start looking at the vitamins and minerals and the nutrients that they're actually taking in, if, say, they're eating pizza, it may fit into the macronutrients, but there's really no nutritional value in that pizza. So it's very important that, yes, you want to stick with the macronutrients and you want to fall into those guidelines, but you also want to make sure that it's actually coming from good sources and there are nutrients and vitamins in what you're eating. It's very true, like you said. It's not just looking at the, you know, from a 10,000 view. It's really get down there, see what you're actually eating, and make sure it's nutritionally valuable.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting. I had this conversation with a Pilates instructor yesterday. I've been getting cramps in my feet. And she said, oh, have you looked at your magnesium levels lately? And we started talking about cramping and, you know, getting nutrients from our foods and, you know, when to add supplements. And the conversation turned to how processed our foods are these days and how few nutrients are actually still present in our foods because we've depleted the soil of these nutrients, and therefore the vegetables and the fruits that are growing in the soil and the animals that are eating the grass that's grown in the soil. You know, it's just a whole cycle of reduced nutritional value in our food. So do you address, like, food sources, dealing with supplementing your food with maybe a vitamin or some sort of other nutrients, and you know, what's the best approach for those concerns?
Yeah, we do discuss with the kids, you know, food sourcing, where is it coming from, you know, and we leave it up to them to decide, you know, really what's in their family's budget. Can they afford to go organic? I don't know. I mean, it's pretty expensive for some of the stuff out there, especially if they're teenagers. They're going to want to be eating a lot of stuff. We recommend that they try to get things as unprocessed as possible, and really look to make sure there's not a bunch of, like, sodium nitrate and things like that in there. But it's ultimately what can they afford and what can they, you know, feasibly get into their system. But you said it. I mean, it's a business. It's a food business. So, you know, in our society, it's great that we have capitalism, but at the same time, they're gonna, you know, try to juice it up and try to get something out there pretty quick, and lower the cost of the food production.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy out there, and I mean, you're in Colorado. Colorado's known for healthy lifestyles and alternative lifestyles in terms of, you know, there are a lot of vegetarians, there are a lot of vegans, et cetera, et cetera. How does a junior athlete adapt if he or she or his or her family has decided to adopt a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, or gluten-free for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, there's one, I guess the first step would be educating yourself on, you know, what gluten-free means, what vegetarian means. There's varying degrees to that. I don't usually recommend a whole lot of supplements to the kids because, we deal with a lot of, 12 to 15-year-olds. The supplement industry is not regulated by the FDA, so they can kind of put whatever they want on their labels that say it's steroid-free and all this stuff, but they can really put in whatever they want. So there's that danger of you're putting something into your body that you don't know that's even in there. But really, step one is education. Two is really trying to plan ahead and make sure that you know what you're taking into your body. I really support like the Paleo Diet. I think you've kind of heard me talk about it already, where it's lean protein, fruits, vegetables. Those are going to be your most nutrient-dense items. If you're a vegan and you're cutting out a lot of your protein, you're going to try to try to get a lot of your sources from like a soy protein, a lot of nuts, things like that. And if a family does decide to go one of those routes, I strongly encourage talking to a registered dietitian or a professional before they do that, not just reading something on the internet and jumping right into it.
That's really good advice. I mean, what are the issues with talking to registered dietitians and nutritionists is that a lot of times if they are affiliated with a certain medical practice or a certain company, just like, any industry out there now, they can be influenced, whether positively or negatively, by those outside factors. And so I think it's really challenging now to get unbiased nutrition information. And that's a frustrating thing as, A, as a parent, B, as someone who wants to eat healthy herself and, put good things into my body. I mean, I exercise a lot and I need my body to hold up, and I am, not getting any younger. And so it becomes that much more challenging. But with kids especially, and I know there are people out there like yourself who specialize in working with young people, and more specifically even than that, young athletes, what are some kind of red flags that parents need to look out for when choosing a professional to guide them along the nutritional path?
For an independent nutrition professional, you'll see on their website if there's certain supplements that they push or they recommend, they'll have those on there. If you click on those and then you scroll all the way down to the new page that it opens up, typically it'll say, I'm blanking on the word, but basically a person that sells for that company. They can make commission off of that. That's very common in gyms like Lifetime or 24-Hour Fitness. They'll have a registered dietitian on staff, and then when they're going through your meal plans and all that, then they say, I recommend this supplement, which just happens to be down in the cafe, and guess what? They get a commission on that. So you just have to be careful. You have to do your due diligence. Like I said, I don't really recommend supplements very much for the kids. If I were going to, I would say USANA, because they have with tennis professional athletes, they have $1 million insurance policy that if you get tested positive and you've only been taking USANA products, then they're going to cover you for up to $1 million of damages. But again, it's just doing your due diligence, making sure that person is a specialist in a sports field, and that they don't just have one particular brand of products on their website. Again, when you start clicking on the supplements, make sure that they're not again, I'm blanking on the word for it, but a independent seller where they make a commission off of it.
And that's not to say that all supplements are bad. I mean, there are some really good ones out there. It's like you said, it's just a matter of doing your homework. And unfortunately, the medical industry doesn't always keep up with the nutrition industry. So even speaking with your healthcare professional, your doctor, your pediatrician, doesn't always give you the information that you're seeking in terms of making sure you're putting the right things in your child's body. So, it is, like I said, really tricky out there, and that's why, I'm so grateful for you to come in and share your knowledge with us and your experience. Let's switch gears a little bit, because I know, most of the people that are in the Parenting Aces audience are pretty educated. They're pretty savvy. Mm-hmm. They go online, they read a lot, they talk to a lot of people, and so I want to dig deeper today and really get down to some specific recommendations for tennis players in particular. And I know you have some top nutrition tips that you share with your players. If we can talk about, what your recommendations are during a training block for, calorie intake, meal intake, specific foods and drinks, what your recommendations are during competition, what foods to take on court, which drinks to take on court, what to eat and drink before and after matches and between matches. I think these are the specific details that parents really need to understand.
Okay, great. I actually have 5 top tips really for improving your nutrition for short-term results and long-term results. And, really the first one is educate yourself and plan ahead. Then I'll go into nutrition or nutrients and hydration timing. Then I will go into sodium intake for the players, how to reduce cramping, making sure that you're getting the correct nutrients, and then also talking about how beneficial it is for life. So I think that covers everything that you were just talking about, but if it doesn't, ask me questions and we'll go through it. But really, like I said, the first thing is to educate yourself. We've kind of already talked about that, and really planning ahead. The biggest things with nutrition is, one, nutritional knowledge. Like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of gray area out there in terms of nutrition. The different medical, your general practitioner really won't have a solid knowledge of nutrition because that's not what they specialize in. And then the registered dietitians, they have specialized knowledge, but maybe they push a product that they get more commission on, who knows. But really educating yourself, there's a ton of good resources out there. One of the books I recommend is Nutrient Timing, The Future of Sports Nutrition, and that is by Dr. John Ivey. He goes really in depth in terms of when you should take in the nutrients to get the biggest bang for your buck, basically. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But then there's also resources from the USTA and the ITPA out there online. But first is nutritional knowledge. To educate yourself. Knowledge is power. If you ever have any questions, they can feel free to reach out to me or find a registered dietitian out by them. And then number 2 is implementation.
Let me interrupt you one sec, Michael. Would you be comfortable giving out your email address or whatever contact information people should use to get in touch with you?
Sure. It's michael@highaltitudetennis.com. So that's my email, and I can mention at the end here. And then, the second part of that is implementation, which requires discipline and consistency, and this is by far the toughest part. I sometimes struggle with the discipline and consistency part myself. But this is where it's very important for the parents and the students to plan ahead. Very often, we're so busy, there's many things drawing our attention. We never really sit down and plan out what we're going to do for that week or how I'm going to get all these meals cooked and really what I should be eating. And a lot of the times that falls on the parents because sometimes the kids don't take the leadership role on that they should, or they haven't been taught to take on that leadership role. So education, planning ahead, I would recommend if you've educated yourself or you've talked to a professional and they've given you a meal plan, I would go through it do the research on the vitamins and minerals that are in there, the amount of calories, all that, and then start planning out, maybe a Sunday is cooking day. So we go shopping Sunday morning. My son or daughter is helping me cook for the rest of the week. We put it into Tupperware dishes, and then it's all ready to go. So that way, when you come home from practice, it's not 8 o'clock at night, you're tired, you need to do homework. I'm just going to throw a pizza in the oven for 20 minutes, and then I'll eat. This way you can just pull the Tupperware dish out, heat it up, and then, start in on your homework. So
great
really
suggestion.
Good number. Any questions for me on that topic?
Well, the only thing I would throw out there, and this is just speaking from my personal experience, is when your kid is in competition mode, meaning your weekends are being spent traveling and playing in tournaments and, trying to squeeze homework in between matches, and you get home at 10 o'clock on Sunday night and school starts at 7:45 the next morning. I mean, this is the reality of a tennis family, right? I mean, life is really busy. And the first thing to go, as you said, is nutrition piece, because we have so many quick, cheap options out there for calorie sources, not necessarily for nutrition sources. So, one thing I would ask you is, are there any restaurant chains out there or food items that are quick and easy to pick up at a grocery store that would be, located in any city across the U.S., to take the place of those home-cooked meals when you just can't get it done?
Yes, I'm a big fan of Whole Foods. It depends where you're located. If you have a Whole Foods near you, or maybe a Trader Joe's or a Sprouts or one of those natural grocers, they typically have a pre-made area on there or in the store. I'm a big fan of, if I'm totally out of time, I need to go to sleep or I need to do something else, and I haven't prepared, then I would go there, grab one of their grilled chicken breasts that usually is not on the shelf for days and days and days. It doesn't have a ton of preservatives in it. Grab that and you can throw it in the microwave when you get to work or wherever you're going. That's a pretty simple solution. I know at Whole Foods they have a great salad bar, and then they have pre-cooked chicken and different meats out there as well that you can, cook turkey that you can put on your salad.
Mhm. And what about the fast food chains? I mean, I'm a big Chipotle fan, and they tout their good ingredients. Although I know they've had some issues lately, but I mean, are there some restaurant chains that are okay when you're out at a tournament and you're staying in a hotel and you don't have access to a kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Chipotle, so I didn't want to mention that since they're having their. I think they're finished with all their issues right now, but Chipotle is a good option. You get the carbs with the rice, you get the protein. I would limit the cheese and the sour cream, if possible, before you go out for a match. Throw as many veggies on there as you can. Subway's decent. But with the meat sitting there, it's going to have a lot of preservatives in it. I'm not sure how long their shelf life is. I don't know the background of Subway, but if I'm out at a tournament and we have not planned ahead and we haven't cooked any of our meals ahead of time, then we'll go to a Chipotle if we've run out of time and we just have to get something really quick before we go on to our next match.
Got it. Okay. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, but I just, these are real life practical questions, I think, that are helpful, for us to have that information. So thank you.
No problem. Anytime you guys need more clarity or you feel like the listeners need more clarity on what I'm talking about, please ask.
Okay. Will do.
Okay. All right, so number 2 is really nutrient and hydration timing. This is one of the issues that you brought up, and this is what I see across tournaments, just rampant. That players and parents really don't know what to do before, during, or after a match to make sure that they're setting themselves up for success in the later rounds. Really, hydration is critical. We play out in Vegas pretty often. It can get very hot out there. It can be very dry. You don't realize how much you're sweating just because it evaporates off your skin rapidly. And then suddenly we're in trouble if you're not drinking very much. I know that even if you lose 2% of your body weight, your capacity for work is going down big time, and if you get up to like 5%, it's about 30% reduction in capacity of work. So that's a huge drop off. So we got to make sure that we're on top of hydration. I'll go through some stats here. So listeners, if you guys have if you have a notebook and pen, you can go ahead and write some of these down. Ideally, perfect world scenario. Depends on your match time. 8 a.m. matches, this might be kind of tough to do, but 2 to 3 hours before a match or a workout, you want to have at least 2 to 3 cups of fluid. So that's about 16 to 22 ounces. Then again, an hour prior, you want to have another cup and a half, which is about 8 to 12 ounces. And then 15 minutes prior to a match or workout, drink another cup for about 8 ounces. Again, those are pretty wide ranges there. If you're 9 years old and you're pretty small, probably not going to be able to handle all that fluid. Probably going to be needing to go to the bathroom a lot. But this is a good way to make sure your body is adequately hydrated. And again, experiment, see what your body can handle. But it's important to go out there adequately hydrated so you don't have any reduction in performance. So,
and when you say fluids, sorry, I'm interrupting you again. When you say fluids, are you talking straight up water? Are you talking sports drink like a Gatorade or a Powerade or one of the powders? Are you talking juice?
It can be any one of those three. The danger with drinking a lot of water, if you're a heavy sweater, is if you drink just pure unsalted water and you sweat a lot, you're going to lose all that sodium, and then we have problems with a big sodium imbalance. So what I typically recommend to people is take a Gatorade, cut it in half, so pour half of your Gatorade into another empty bottle of Gatorade, and then fill the rest up with water. One, that's going to give you some of the nutrients and the sodium that you need going into your match, which we'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about. But it also waters it down so it gets into your bloodstream faster.
Okay,
that's a great
perfect.
question, though. Okay. So during the match, tennis is great because unlike other sports where the time is kind of all over the place, you don't truly know when you're going to get your break. Tennis, you can at least get your 90-second break every 2 games. So what we recommend to the kids, whenever you have a changeover, you need to drink at least like 4 to 12 swallows. Again, that's a big range because there's a big difference in a 7-year-old and a big difference between a 7-year-old and an 18-year-old. So 4 to 12 swallows, which is usually about 4 to 12 ounces during your changeover. It's important to, if you're drinking a watered-down sport drink, you don't want to just sit there and chug it and get all the carbs into your system at one time. You want to make sure your carbs are spread out along the entire match. And really, again, the 4 to 12 ounces, make sure you experiment with the ounces to see, 1, what your body can handle, and 2, ideally, perfect world, you want to have your weight the same at the beginning of a match as it was at the end of the match. So you don't want to be losing any weight due to fluid loss, because then we have to replace that later on.
Can I throw in an aside here too? Again, I'm probably driving you nuts, but my listeners know I am a huge proponent of match play and, playing practice matches. Match play and practice matches, that's the perfect time for your kid to be trying out all of these things that Michael's suggesting. You don't want your kid showing up at a big tournament and testing these fluids out for the first time. That's just not a good idea. They're already nervous. Their stomach may already be a little churny from the butterflies before the match. So best that you kind of work all these details out in a practice situation, and practice matches are a great way to do that. And then you can, you and your child can make the appropriate adjustments in terms of what they're drinking, how much, and, find that right balance for them. Okay, so sorry, I'll shut up again.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Great points. And, yes, again, you want to try this out in practice where, if you start feeling queasy or bad, it's not that big of a deal. It's not like you're at a sectional or a national or anything like that. And again, there's a lot of gray area with the things I'm recommending to all of you. One, because everybody's different. Everybody absorbs nutrients and things settle in their stomach differently. Sizes, age, all that goes into play. I'm just giving you guys recommendations, what's worked for us, what's worked really well for us, and based on the research and all the things that we've done to make sure that's the right stuff. But again, like during changeovers, 4 to 12 ounces of fluids. Again, I recommend the watered down. Sports drink can handle solid food. You can go ahead and eat some, salted pretzels, maybe a Cliff Bar or sports bar. If you can't handle the gel, the solid food, maybe go with a gel pack. But I really like the salted pretzels because, one, it gives you some of the carbs, but then it also has salt in there, so you're not going to cramp up as much, or you're going to at least delay that a little bit. And also, with the salt, it triggers your thirst response, so it tricks you into drinking more, which, again, we want to remain hydrated. Ideally, 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. That's usually pretty easy to do. I know one Gatorade has about 35 to 40 grams of carbs in it. So as long as you're getting like 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour, drinking some of that Gatorade, eating something like a Cliff Bar or some salted pretzels, you should be good to go. If the practice or match lasts longer than an hour, the fluid you should be consuming should have a 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein in it, ideally.
Okay, and some examples of that. Wait, what are some examples of that 4-to-1 ratio? Some foods that would fit that bill.
So some of my athletes will, there's not a whole lot of sports drinks that have protein in it that actually settle in the stomach. I've chocolate milk is a good one, but nobody usually drinks that while they're playing a match. What I recommend is, you can have, like, if you can handle food, very light sandwich. Some people will just take the sliced deli meat from the deli counter, like pizza, turkey, and start nibbling on that, or that protein bar. So you have a Gatorade, watered down Gatorade, and then nibbling on a protein bar to get that protein ratio.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. And then post-match. So this is where, again, perfect world, you can weigh yourself in before, you can weigh yourself in after. I know the professional level guys and girls do that, but we're talking about juniors here, so most of the time there's not going to be a scale around. But a good rule of thumb is drinking 20 to 24 ounces of fluid, at least, within the next 30 to 45 minutes after you finish a match or practice. Also, consuming 6 to 20 grams of protein, 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates. And ideally, those two, the protein and the carbs, would come from food sources. So a turkey sandwich, protein bar. If you have a little bit more time, then you can go get like the Chipotle if you have a lot more time in between your matches. But again, it's very important to come off the court, have something prepared, have something planned out for what you're going to do. I can't tell you how often people come off the court in Denver or in Vegas or wherever we're playing, and then they go hang out with their friends, and they're not doing anything, which is fine. It's good you want to hang out with your friends, but you gotta make sure that you're taking care of your body so you can set yourself up better for the later rounds.
Right. And that is tricky. And I mean, especially if you're playing in hot weather where, you have to carry a cooler with ice because the food will spoil otherwise, or you're playing in a remote area that may not have a Chipotle or a Subway or even a grocery store that has decent options close by. And with a lot of the junior tournaments, I don't know about where you guys are in Colorado, but in the South, you know, the kids may only have an hour between matches. So that's really challenging, figuring out how to refuel between those matches with something that's going to give them the nutrients plus digest quickly enough so that they don't get nauseous on the court in their second match. I mean, it's very difficult to balance all of that.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to a little bit more the education and the research. You want to make sure that you're bringing in high glycemic carbs, and you know, at the same time within that 30 to 45 minutes. Ideally, again, if you can have an ice chest there with the food prepared already, that would be perfect. If you don't have that, at least you want to start eating like a protein bar on your way to go picking up food. But again, you don't want to sit there all day without anything, and that's the beauty in the curse of tennis is there's no time limit on this. You don't know if you're going to have an hour or, you know, maybe they get to a third set and you have an extra hour to refuel. It's really one of the intricacies of tennis and why it's very interesting to people like me.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. So let's go on to, you know, eating during a match and before a match. So obviously, you know, we talked about hydration. You want to be, before your match, you want to be setting yourself up for success. It's the same thing with eating. Again, if you have 3 or 4 hours before your match, hopefully you don't have an 8 a.m. first round. I prefer the morning matches, but a lot of kids don't. If they have like a noon match, ideally 3 to 4 hours ahead of time, you want to eat something a little bit more high complex carbs, something that'll fill you up, something that'll hold you over for a longer period of time. If you're growing a lot, some of the kids will want to eat an hour out, and that will be, you know, ideally 3 to 4 hours out. And then if you need to eat again that hour out, you need to go with something lighter again, like the turkey sandwich, the protein bar with, you know, some vegetables, you know, sports drink going along with the hydration. Anything that you can do that's not going to upset your stomach during your match and obviously set you up for success.
Right.
We already kind of talked about what you want to do during your match. So if you're eating the solid food, Cliff Bar, sports bar, salted pretzels, gels if you can't handle it, handle solid food. And again, within the 45 minutes, at least 20 grams of protein, and then 30 to 60 grams of carbs within that 30 to 45 minute time frame. After about an hour at least, if let's say you're done for the day, it's an hour to 2 hours after your match. You want to make sure that the body maintains in an anabolic growth environment. So basically, during your match, you were probably catabolic. Your body was beating itself up, going after the ball, trying to fuel yourself. You want to make sure that you're getting enough high complex carbs in there so you can refuel your muscle glycogen, basically your muscle energy system.
Okay, and you know, one of the hardest things I think for these kids is when they first start going deeper in the tournaments and they're playing 3 or 4 days in a row and they're maybe, you know, on their 7th match of the tournament. And it oftentimes isn't a matter of which player is the better tennis player at that point, but which one has paced him or herself better in terms of taking care of the nutrition and hydration needs.
Absolutely. That's totally important. It's you know, like you said, it comes down to, you know, who's in better shape and who's fueling their body optimally, or who, you know, was celebrating their first round and didn't take it seriously after that, and then they start cramping up. And that's really kind of goes into my third topic, which is realizing the importance of sodium. You can see the pros on TV. They kind of have like this kind of cloudy mixture that's usually, some sodium in the water with some other stuff. But it's critical that the kids are taking care of their sodium needs early on in a tournament because, as you said, as you get longer into the tournaments, 4, 5, 6 matches in, 3 days in, that's when we see a lot of athletes tapping out or cramping. Ideally, players should not be restricting their salt intake. We have to be careful when I say that because one of our kids here, really funny kid, he took that as, I'm going to eat a bunch of chips while playing my video game in front of the TV. I'm going to keep eating that until my stomach hurts, and I'm going to go outside and play. So when you heard, don't restrict your salt intake, that's what he did. I mean, the mind of a 10-year-old. So typical Americans that are not working out 3 hours a day probably need to watch their sodium intake. Tennis players, especially guys, don't really need to watch their sodium intake, but again, don't go crazy and just eat a whole thing of chips. When we see the cramping, there's usually 2 causes. It's either overworked muscle fibers, which there's they need to do a lot more research on that. It's kind of inconclusive as to what causes overworked muscle fibers to cramp up, genetics, all that. But really the most common one that we see are muscle cramps related to a lot of sweat losses and sodium deficits, basically exertional heat cramps, and you usually see those later on in the tournament. So we talked about hydration earlier. I'm going to talk about how to reduce your chances for cramps. One is during a match. I don't know if any of your kids have complained about their calf twitching or their quad twitching while they're on a changeover, but that's usually an emergency situation. That's, I have 20 or 30 minutes before my whole leg is going to cramp up and I'm going to be, hopping around the court and having a bunch of winners hit on me. So really what they want to do, they want to make sure on their changeovers that they continue with their fluid, the watered-down sports drink. If they are a heavy sweater, they need to add in some salt. So if you feel your leg twitching, if you have little bags of salt that you can get from Subway or pretty much any restaurant, they'll have the little bags right there by the soda machine. You can grab some of those, put them in your bag. If you ever feel the twitching, or if you're a heavy sweater where you go through like 3 or 4 shirts in a tournament, put in half a teaspoon of added salt. Just dump that little packet in there, stir that around, and then start drinking that. That's usually a sign for you to get more sodium into your system, so we don't have a leg locking up. If you're just a heavy sweater in general, you want to have about a 1/4 teaspoon of added salt, just in general, in all of your drinks while you're playing matches. So emergency situation, have one of those little packets. If you're a heavy sweater, have about half of that just throughout your normal practice and matches and all that. And then post-match, again, you want to have another half teaspoon of added salt into that sports drink that you're drinking after while you're eating a little bit more solid food, trying to get back on track for your next round.
That's great advice. And I know my son got in the habit of throwing salt packets in his bag after one too many cramping incidents. So yeah. Those are good to have on hand.
Yeah, it's if you haven't cramped, it's quite an experience. So yeah, you will learn to increase your sodium intake once you've cramped, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes a little bit of firsthand experience to make those changes. But those are my best practices in terms of before, during, and after a match to make sure that you're ready to go. That's what's worked really, really well for all of our athletes. I've never had an athlete cramp up on the court. I've never had them draw to a tournament due to cramps. Typically our kids win in the 3rd set. And it goes back to education and trying to, as much as we can, get the kids to be disciplined and consistent about following those guidelines as much as possible.
That's great. And I mean, these are practices that can start really young, right? I mean, these are not things that need to wait for high school age kids. I mean, the sooner these kids get into these good, positive habits, and the sooner that the parents get in the habit. Because let's face it, the majority of the time, we parents are the ones traveling with our kids to the tournaments. So it's important that we kind of get into that rhythm as well and plan ahead and make sure that we have everything on hand. And I mean, let's address this whole issue of the parent as the role model too. I know, there's a lot of nutrition education that happens in schools, and the kids are encouraged to go home and talk to their families about implementing healthy eating practices and healthy physical activity practices. And there really is evidence to support the fact that a family that eats healthy and exercises regularly produces kids that continue those healthy habits into their own adulthoods, right? So we parents, we hold a lot of influence here.
Absolutely, and that's really kind of my last topic on this is it's a lot bigger than tennis. Obviously we want the best for our kids. If they could go pro, great. If they can go to college, great. But I try to educate the parents on understanding that this is a lifestyle that they're building for their kids. So that the healthier you can eat now, the better they're typically going to eat down the road. I know from personal experience that I never got to eat the sugary cereal, period, at my house. And I loved going on travel trips because hotels, sugary cereal is party time. But nowadays, you run down there for breakfast, fastest you've ever gotten out. I don't eat sugar. I haven't had donuts in over 2 decades. I bit into a cookie the other day and I had to spit it out because it was too much sugar. And I'm healthier now, and I eat better than I would imagine most people because I was brought up with better stuff and better options, and it came from my parents. And it's not that we can force the kids into eating certain things. It's just if you only provide certain things, then they don't really have that much of an option, I guess. But again, it is we start at the young age and try to educate the kids as much as we educate ourselves, and hopefully they make the correct decisions once all the evidence is in front of them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a challenge as they get older, and for my listeners that have younger kids and you're still taking your kids to the tournaments, as they get older and start going to tournaments with their friends or with their friends' families, all of a sudden they are left to their own devices in terms of making these nutritional choices. And so all we can do, like you said, Michael, is lay that foundation and, pray to whoever you pray to that the kids continue to heed that advice once they're out in the world on their own, and whether that means they're out in the world for a weekend at a tennis tournament or out in the world, literally in college or beyond. That's our job as parents, is to lay those positive foundations for them. And so all right, well, we're down to our last 5 minutes or so. So I really want to give you the opportunity to get in any other advice or information that you want to share with our listeners today. So I will shut up and let you talk.
Yeah, and I agree with you in terms of, number one, getting the education in front of the kids, letting them know you can eat this or you can eat that. If you eat this, these are the benefits to eating this. If you eat that, this is what's going to happen. We had one kid that really stuck with our nutrition program, really focusing on lean protein, as many fruits and vegetables as he can, and then he would eat, the pasta and the rice and stuff periodically. He really stuck with that for, about 2 months, and he felt great. He was practicing great. All his fitness stats were going up, and all that. And then I think it was like Super Bowl or something, or a friend's birthday party, but he started eating some Papa John's or Domino's pizza, and he was about 2 slices in, and he felt heartburn. And he was like, oh, I'll just ignore that. It tastes so good. And then he continued eating it, and then the next morning he showed up, his face was a little puffy. He felt terrible all day. So, again, if you can educate the kids and you can get the right choices in front of them, when they do eat something that's not as good for them, they will definitely feel it. They'll wake up, they'll feel sluggish, they will not feel as good as they did, a day prior. They won't be able to perform as well as they did a day prior. And sometimes it takes them, you have to get burned. You have to get that learning experience firsthand. Mom and dad, trainer, they probably don't know anything. They're adults. They've never been, teenagers before. But again, it's being supportive, educating, providing the best possible choices for them, and ultimately letting them choose their own path and trying to guide as best we can in a supportive way.
Well, I think the kids at HAT are very fortunate to have you around, and I suspect that most of the people listening to the show have the advantage of someone with your depth of knowledge available to guide the family and guide the players. And so parents that are listening, Michael has offered his email address if you want to reach out to him with any questions. To the junior coaches tuning in, I encourage you to educate yourselves too, because if you don't have somebody with that nutrition knowledge on staff at your academy or your facility where you're working with these kids, then how else are they going to get the information? And it's such an integral part of the training process, right? I mean, fueling your body is a basic part of being an athlete.
Absolutely, and again, if anybody needs any help, you guys can feel free to reach out to myself or any member of our staff. We don't know everything, but we study every day. Our complete focus is on the kids and making them better tennis players and better people, and hopefully giving them a better shot at life. So if anybody needs any help at any time, you're more than welcome to reach out, and we'll do anything we can for you.
And that email address again, Michael?
Michael@highaltitudetennis.com.
Great. So you gave out the name of one book that you like. I would love for you to mention that again. And if there are any other websites or books that you recommend that we go to, if you wouldn't mind sharing those as well.
Yep. So the first one I talked about was Nutrient Timing, Future of Sports Nutrition. It's by Dr. John Ivey. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, he's a professor at the University of Texas and works with all of their athletes. Like I said, I'm a big believer in the paleo diet. Again, you can have the rice, you can have the potatoes, you can have the pasta and all that, but really focusing on the lean protein, fruits, vegetables. Dr. Lauren Cordain wrote that. He's actually up in Fort Collins here in Colorado. I went and met with him before I really started putting in place our nutrition program. So he's a great resource, great guy, very smart. But it was like the Paleo Diet for Athletes was his book. The USTA and the ITPA, which is International Tennis Performance Association, they have hydration, recovery research articles, and then a ton of links to different research studies by unbiased third-party scientists that are, just interested in the sport of tennis and how can we make the human body work a little bit better. And I don't have direct links to the USTA and the ITPA, but if you just Google those, it'll pop right up for you.
And those are actually on the links area of ParentingAces.com too. So if you guys want to look there, Mark Kovacs of ITPA has been on this show and continues to be a phenomenal resource for Parenting Aces. So, yeah, I always highly recommend anything that Mark is involved in. So, Michael, any other last-minute tips or information you'd care to share before we sign off today?
No, I just stress the importance that it is bigger than tennis. Ideally, I gave you guys some information in terms of what you can do before, during, and after a match. If you have any questions on that, reach out to me at Michael@HiAltitudeTennis. But again, if we can build the proper nutrition foundation now for these kids, they're going to be better off in life later on. But Lisa, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here and hopefully help some people out there wherever they may be around the country or world. And, if you ever need anything from us here at HAT, you can always reach out.
Thank you so much, and just love talking with you today. I learned a lot, as I knew I would, so thanks for being with us. To my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and hope you all have a great week, and good luck to your kids as they continue training for tennis and for life out there. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week on Parenting Aces.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Today, Bridget Griffin shared a video of her daily yoga routine, 2 self-help articles, and her new blog called Build Your Inner Bridge with Bridge. Girl, your sharing has turned into oversharing. No worries, Bridge. Geico has some info worth sharing with your 7 blog followers, like how you could save money on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim just by visiting geico.com. How's that for building your inner bridge? Bridge? Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.